In this tutorial, we will show you how to edit the footer on your website. Upon logging in and being greeted with your dashboard, we will use the mouse cursor to navigate to the front of the site. Once the site is loaded, we will go to the top of the page and we will select the Edit with Elementor footer and we will open it in a new tab. We will then navigate to this page. And as you can see, the page is loaded, and we will start by using our mouse cursor to navigate around the page. As we navigate around, you will see borders appear around the section. We will start with the main section. By selecting the Edit button, the window on the left-hand side will appear. As in our previous tutorials, here we can change the stretching of the section, the content width, column gaps, the height, vertical alignment, and so forth. Moving on to the styling section, we can choose to add a background image or color to this entire section. Once we are happy, we will move on to the background overlay. Again, here we can choose to either add an image or a color as a background overlay. For the border section, we can choose to add a border. As you can see, we currently have the border set to solid with a width at the top of 1. And as you can see, that creates a divider for the footer. Moving on to the shape divider, we can add one to the top or to the bottom, and we can style it accordingly. Lastly, in the advanced section, we have our margin and our padding. As you can see, our margin we have left as default, and our padding we currently have top and bottom set to 90. As you can see, that will be the spacing between the end of the container and the content inside. If I was to remove the top padding, you can see that the top spacing has disappeared. If I was to set the top padding at 180, you can see that it is roughly double that of the bottom. I will set that back to default. And in the motion effects, we can add a scrolling effect, as well as an entrance animation for the section. Lastly, in the responsiveness, attributes, and custom CSS, you can leave that out as that is for more in-depth development. Moving away from the section, we are now going to edit one of the columns. As you can see, we currently have 4 columns here, indicated by the dotted black and white border. Again, by selecting the edit icon, the window on the left appears. First, we can change our layout settings, which includes column width, vertical and horizontal alignment, and in the styling section, we can choose to add a background, either a color, or we can choose to add an image. We can choose to add a cross, and as you can see, it will appear. Once we have added the image, there are the additional options such as the position, attachment, the repeat options, and the sizing. I will remove that and move on. Here we can add scrolling and mouse effects, and in the background overlay, we can choose to add either an image or a color as a background for this column. We can also add it as a hover effect so that it only appears when we hover over the column. Next, in the border section, we can add a border to this section. My apologies, to this column. As you can see here, we can choose the width and the size and the color. We can also do a hover border if we want. And moving on to the advanced section, again we have our margin and padding, which we have set to default as it is fitting nicely. In the motion effects, we can add a scrolling effect, mouse effect, or an entrance animation. As you can see, since we are only editing the column, this animation only applies to this column. Lastly, in the responsive, attributes, and custom CSS, we can leave that out as that is for more in-depth development. Now that we are done with the column, we can move on to a widget. As you can see, the widgets are indicated by the blue border. Again, we will select the Edit button, and on the window on the left hand side, we can change the title. As you can see, it is all live, and the changes are happening as we make them. We can add a link to this title, and in the styling section, we can change the text color, the typography, which includes the font, size, weight, transform settings, the styling for the text, decoration, line height, and letter spacing. Lastly, in the advanced section, again we have our margin and padding, which you can see is left at default as it is fitting nicely. Scrolling down to the motion effects, we can add scrolling effects as well as mouse effects and an entrance animation. As you can see, that entrance animation only applies to the About Us text because that is the heading that we are currently editing. I will set that back to default and we will continue. The background, we can add a color or an image to this background. Moving forward, we can choose to add a border to the heading as well as change the positioning. Lastly, the responsive, attributes and custom CSS, you need not worry as it is for more in-depth development. Once we are happy with all the changes made, we will go to the bottom of the page and we will select Update. That is how you would edit the footer on your website.